Good morning. Welcome to the Middle States Commission on Higher Education's webinar, Nexus of Communication, a webinar for new Accreditation Liaison Officers. It's not working. We want to remind you that this presentation remains the property of the Commission, and if you have specific questions related to your institution, you should reach out to your Commission Vice President Liaison. This presentation is being recorded, and we will be sharing this recording with you and those who registered but were unable to attend this morning. We have reserved time for questions and answers at the end. If you have questions that come to mind as we move through this morning's program, we are monitoring the chat function and will collect and answer as many questions as we can at the end. For those of you using a web browser, the way you submit questions into the chat function appears at the bottom of your screen. And for those on a mobile device, you can submit questions through the chat function by clicking 3 dots. We will do our best to get to as many of your questions as we can. Today's presenters are Dr. Edna Corbett and myself. Let me tell you a little bit about me. I am Diana Bonner. I'm the Assistant Director for Institutional Support Services, and I've been with the Commission for 10 years. And now I invite Dr. Corbett to introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. I am Edna Corbett, and I am a Vice President for Institutional Relations. I have been with the Commission for about 4.5 years. Thank you, Diana.
And finally, I'd like to acknowledge our third partner working behind the scenes to manage the Zoom platform, administer the polls, and keep us on track, Ms. Victoria Clark, Director for Conferences and Educational Programs. Today, we intend to address the following. We will give a brief overview of the work of the MSCHE. We will discuss institutional membership responsibilities. Of course, we will discuss in detail the ALO role and responsibilities. We will give an overview of the accreditation cycle processes as they relate to ALOs. We will discuss the MSCHE institution portal. We will talk about communication expectations and strategies. And finally, we will give you a number of resources to take away. And then we will open the program for questions and answers. You should have received an email containing a link to information which will help you follow along with our presentation. We have placed that link in the chat. We hope that at the end of today's program, we will have helped you gain a better understanding of your role as ALO and the expectations of the Commission for you as an ALO representing your institution. Finally, we want to provide you with many resources and strategies to assist you in your new role. So we have introduced ourselves to you. Now let's find out a bit about who you are. Vicki, please launch the poll. How long have you been the ALO? 2 years or more? 1 to 2 years? Less than a year? Or wait, I'm the ALO?
Doesn't look like it.
No, I don't think we are seeing the responses to the poll. There's no video.
There's no video?
No. Ah, here we are. Okay. Excellent. It looks as though most of you are less than a year, which is exactly the audience we were hoping for. So for those of you who have been here for a little bit longer than that, there will be some of this information that will not be new to you or should not be new to you. And we hope that we won't bore you with the detail, but perhaps along the way, you'll pick up tips and tricks and information that will be helpful as you move forward in the position. So we have another poll. Can you click to the next slide, Ina? The commission offers many different kinds of events. And so that we can get a better understanding of the audience this morning, please go ahead and tell us which of these recent events you might have attended. While we have somewhat of a mixed audience in terms of length of service, we want to know what you might have already learned from attending events, and if there is something that, well, we know that there may be gaps, and we're going to try to fill those with the information that we're going to give today. Okay, Vicki, you can go ahead and close the poll. So it looks like many of you have attended other webinars than those that are listed on the slide. A few of you have attended the Coffee with the Commission. Many of you are involved in the Self-Study Institute. That's good to know. And we appreciate the President and Provost meeting attendees as well. And a number have attended the Substantive Change request webinars. That's also really good to know. So again, there may be a little bit of duplication in the information that you hear this morning, but we will endeavor to give you new information and keep you engaged in this process. Next slide, please. Before we drill down into your roles as ALOs and the connection to the commission, we think it would be beneficial to pull back to a larger view and review MSCHE's place in the accreditation landscape. So until July 1st of 2020, MSCHE was one of 7 regional accreditors. These traditional regions are what you see pictured on the map. The recent changes in federal regulations have placed the regional accreditors into the category of institutional accreditors. So the regions are no more. But even before the changes in regulations, thanks to member institutions like yours, the commission was already operating in 48 states, with the exceptions being North Dakota and Montana. 2 US territories, Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands, the District of Columbia, and all told 94 countries around the world. So that's quite a presence when you look at it from the map perspective and not just a listing of countries and areas. On this slide, there are a few key data elements about the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. You see that we have a total number of member institutions, 524. They serve over 2 million undergraduate students with $20.81 billion, that's billion with a B, of Title IV funds. That's according to 2018 data stemming from the NSEKI dashboard. Our membership also includes graduate-only and specialized institutions across every Carnegie classification of degree-granting institutions. Right now, we have a total of 524 institutions, 299 of which are private, nonprofit, 203 are public, and the remaining members are 22, and they are in the for-profit sector. We work with both private and public systems, as you can see, and 7 of those systems are listed on the screen in terms of the breakdown of institutions within those systems. So now we want to share a little information about the commission itself. The commission is a dedicated group of 28 elected members who are comprised of presidents, senior administrators, faculty, and of course, public members. There are 3 additional commissioners-elect who will join in 2022. The commission uses a multi-level decision-making process. You may be familiar with this. The team of peer evaluators that reviews your submissions or visits your campus will provide a report which outlines its findings and provides the team's judgment about whether the standards and requirements are met. In most cases, your institution will be given an opportunity to respond to the team's report. That's the first level of review. During the second level of review, all materials are reviewed by the relevant advisory committee based on the type of review. These committees are made up of evaluators and commissioners. The committees will render an independent decision regarding the materials and recommend an action to the commission. The third level of review is the commission itself. And this is the decision-making body that produces the commission's action. This multi-level decision-making process ensures consistency, equity, and fairness across all reviews. So I have mentioned the peer evaluators, and I know that some of you have that added distinction. Peer evaluators are a vital part of the peer review process, serving as the first layer in the multi-level accreditation decision-making process that I spoke of. The peer evaluators conduct on-site reviews and/or review written reports and evidence submitted by institutions undergoing all different types of accreditation reviews. Peer evaluators also participate in making accreditation and pre-accreditation, either applicant or candidacy decisions. Peer evaluators make careful judgments about an institution's compliance with accreditation standards as outlined in the standards for accreditation, requirements of affiliation, the commission's policies and procedures, and applicable federal regulatory requirements within the context of each institution's mission. So who are these peer evaluators? They are you. They are a dedicated group from across an institution. If you want to learn more about becoming a peer evaluator, I encourage you to visit our website using the hyperlink provided here on the slide. Applications will open on November 1st for peer evaluators. Behind the scenes, the commission staff is comprised of about 30 staff members who handle the day-to-day activities for the commission. You may need to interact with various staff members, such as support@msche.org when you forget your portal password, or the event staff when registering for an event or needing that receipt. You may need to contact the finance department at MSCHE when questioning an invoice. You will find that all of our colleagues on the commission staff are friendly, accessible, and helpful. But your most obvious connection to the commission is through your vice president liaison, noted here as institutional field relations. So another opportunity to tell us a bit about you. This is stolen from the SSI. So for those of you who have been involved in the Self-Study Institute kickoff, you should be getting 100% on this quiz. And actually, I hope that everyone gets a high score on this quiz. So Vicki, will you please launch the poll? Okay, let's see the responses. Perfect.
Yeah.
So there's just a few of you who aren't sure, and that's fine. I know that we've been changing liaisons and we have new members of the staff, but I do encourage you to get to know who your liaison is for your institution. Please close that, thank you. So pictured here is the aforementioned Institution Field Relations Unit. Although you are encouraged to reach out to any of the MSCHE staff members, you should become very comfortable communicating with your institution's vice president liaison for advice and guidance. I am also available to you as a resource for more general matters. So now let's dive deeper into the responsibilities of the institution's Accreditation Liaison Officer. The Accreditation Liaison Officer role and responsibility guidelines is the foundational document upon which your new role rests. You were asked to review it as part of your preparation for this webinar. Please read it, learn it, live it, love it. It is an important document. So section 2 of the Commission's communication in the accreditation process procedures states the following. The institution's CEO or president will appoint an Accreditation Liaison Officer, ALO, to serve as the primary point of contact with the Commission staff and as a resource to the institution on accreditation issues. The Commission expects the institution to abide by the Accreditation Liaison Officer's roles and responsibilities. The individual appointed should meet the following criteria: a resource to the institution on accreditation matters, someone with the time, knowledge, and authority to engage with the president and others on campus on accreditation matters, but not the president and not a consultant. In other words, our expectation is that you have been given the authority and will engage with the commission on behalf of your institution through the appropriate means, and that you will be able to engage with your president and senior leadership at your institution regularly regarding the MSCHE accreditation matters at your institution. So that I'm going to transition to my colleague, Dr. Corbett.
Hello. Again, let's talk about the different sections of that document that you received, the accreditation, the document on the ALOs, roles and responsibilities. So looking at the first section is accreditation review and monitoring. Oops. Go back. Okay. The ALO, as Diana said, serves as the primary contact with the MSCHE staff. You would be copied on all official communication for the institution. So we may be communicating with your president, but you will be copied almost 100% of the time. And therefore, you should be aware of all the accreditation activities for your institution. It is also important for you to maintain contact with your staff liaison, with your VP. So we expect that you will keep us apprised of any changes, anything that is going on at the institution that you think may be connected to accreditation. If in doubt, always definitely talk to us. So the first item says, the first item on that document, ALO, on section A says, the ALO ensures that the president and institutional community are appropriately informed of MSCHE expectations and updates. This comes from the bylaws, which state that all institutions that are accredited by MSCHE and all institutions that have been granted candidate for accreditation status shall be institutional members of Middle States. And as such, you are subject to membership responsibilities and privileges shown on this slide. Pay annual dues, appoint an ALO, contribute to accreditation activities, submit disputes to arbitration, submit commissioner nominations, etc. And we will talk later about the very last one here, the use of the MSCHE logo. So each of these are very important. But we have to say, number two, the second one, appointing the Accreditation Liaison Officer is critical for the relationship between the commission and your institution. So those of you who have been in SSI are very familiar with this one. Why do we put it here? It's because that's part of item one, which is you are to keep your institution appropriately informed, and therefore you should be aware of where your institution is in this accreditation review cycle and monitoring. As you know, we begin with self-study evaluation. 4 years later, we have midpoint peer review, and then 4 years after that, we have the self-study evaluation again. But you're also aware, and we will talk more about this today, about those ongoing monitoring activities. One of those is the annual institutional update. We will tell you more about that. If you have been an ALO more than 1 year, you probably are more familiar with the AIU. But if you have been appointed only in the last few months, this would be an important piece that we need you to pay attention to. Then there are also follow-up reports and visits, recommendations, responses, and the supplemental information reports, which are out of cycle, but it's when the commission wants to know more information because the commission has concerns about your institution's compliance with either the standards for accreditation or the requirements of affiliation. So going a little deeper on the next piece is your self-study evaluation. Again, those of you who are in Self-Study Institute right now, you are steeped in this. You know that the self-study evaluation is your institutional self-study and on-site or over the last year and a half virtual evaluation visit by peer evaluator. It focuses on commission expectations and institutional priorities. And you have heard in SSI about how to connect those two, the commission's expectations and the institutional priorities. So the main purpose is for the institution to be granted reaffirmation of accreditation, or if there is non-compliance, then there will be some other consequences for that. It may also result in some commission recommendations. Going a little deeper, probably few of you have engaged yet in the midpoint peer review. This is not a visit. This is a peer evaluation, but it is a document-driven process. So what we do, what the peers review is two major pieces of data from the annual institutional updates: the accumulated financial and student achievement data, and also if you had been requested by commission action, you would need to have submitted responses to commission recommendations. The peers will provide feedback about the institution's data, and you also have an opportunity to respond to the peers report. There is a special committee that deals with the MPPR, and they will ask for further information if the information that was provided with the AIU and the other pieces of the MPPR is not enough for the commission to complete its review. It does not result in reaffirmation. And there is a training that will be available for any institution that will be undergoing midpoint peer review. You do not have to write a report for this. This is the accumulation of your AIU data that we'll be looking at the midpoint. Then, as you can see, there is a lot involved with this first item, keeping the president and the institutional committee appropriately informed. Now let's talk about another set of responsibilities related to institutional reports. And you will see that in the next item says that the ALO is expected to ensure institutional compliance with all commission requests for written reports and additional information in a timely manner. The ALO is also responsible for maintaining and updating institutional files of accreditation materials, such as reports related to accreditation and reaffirmation and correspondence with MSCHE. On the right, you will see the various types of reports that you may be asked to submit. Again, if you're an SSI, you know that you are required to submit a self-study design, and then at the end of the self-study process, you're required to submit a self-study report. But at any point during that 8-year cycle, the commission may ask for, if there are results of non-compliance or concerns with the MPPR, the commission will ask for a focus report. If there are other concerns throughout those 8 years, the commission will ask for a supplementary information report. If there is non-compliance and an institution is on warning or probation, then we will ask for monitoring report. If the institution is in show cause, and that rarely happens, we would ask for that. The most common is that you will be asked to provide responses to recommendations, but there may be other requests for information because our staff actually monitors the media. And if anything is found in the media that may cause concern for the commission about the institution's compliance, we may request other information from you. So one thing that we absolutely recommend is that you ask your IT staff to whitelist msche.org as a domain. So you will, the information and the correspondence from Msche will not end up in your junk or spam. You really do not want to find a week later that you were supposed to write a report and now you only have a few days to complete it. So let's talk next about the AIU, the Annual Institutional Update. We will not go too deep into it, but that is one of your major responsibility. So what is it? It's the annual collection of data. And this is data, financial data, and student performance. And what we're talking about is retention rates, graduation rates, and also some disaggregated data on your students, enrollment data. And also in the AIU, you have the opportunity to also provide updates to your additional locations and in other instructional sites. So when do we collect it? We normally collect it in April and May. However, due to the pandemic, we know there have been a lot of difficulties, and the last collection actually happened in August of 2020. August 2021. See, the pandemic is doing a number on me too. So what is the purpose of the AIU? To monitor your finances and your academic performance. So where do you find the AIU? Well, first of all, there is lots of FAQs and a lot of information on AIU on our website, but this is a view from the portal. When you log into the portal, you will see that brown box that says annual update. And when you click on that brown box, then you will see what's on the right of your screen. And that tells you all the different types of information that you will be providing to the commission each year. So if you see the general information is, IPEDS ID, we need a copy of your catalog, your calendar, and so on. The second is enrollment, then student achievement, demographics. So this gives you a very good idea. And since you have a copy of the slides, you will know all the different pieces that are part of the AIU. If we monitor the submission of the AIU very closely, so if you have not even started the AIU a couple weeks before the deadline, you will receive an email from your VP saying, hey, what's going on? What's happening? Can we help you? And believe me, I have done that a number of times with my institutions. And some of you that I know you are in the audience, you know that I have worked with you on how to complete the AIU. So now let's do a little poll. So which best describes your involvement with the 2020 or 2021 AIU? So tell me, were you directly involved, very little, or not involved at all? Vicki, please launch poll. Let's see. All right, we probably will find that those of you who are very new might not have been involved as much, other than saying, click submit. All right, we close the poll now. Aha, wow, that is great. We had 60% of our people involved in the AIU. Some very little and some not involved at all. So for the sake of that 40%, I'm going to give you a little bit more information about that. So let's move on to the next. So the AIU process. Aha. So who completes the AIU? Well, you, the ALO, are the primary person responsible for the AIU. But you do not do everything. It should be completed by a group at your institution. Your CFO, your Chief Financial Officer, your Finance Office should be directly involved. Your registrar should be directly involved. And anybody who is involved with student success would provide a lot of information. Also, most of the information will likely come from institutional research. So who sees the AIU data? We, the staff, we monitor the data each year. And if there are any concerns, then we give you a call, we send you an email. And so we, the 7 vice president liaisons, We monitor every single one of our students, of our institutions, particularly with their student performance and their finances. So all those aggregate data reports will be incorporated in the future reviews. So after the self-study evaluation, those 4 years will be incorporated into MPPR, and then between the MPPR and the next evaluation, those 4 years then will be incorporated in the next self-study review. So is there feedback? Not directly. If you don't hear anything, this is where non-news is good news for you. But if we find something of concern, we will be in touch with you. So some of you may have responses to commission recommendations. Those go in conjunction with the AIU. So how do you know if you have those? Go to your institution's statement of accreditation status, particularly if you're a new AIU, a new ALO, and you want to see what the latest commission action is. Look at the last 3 or 4 commissions actions to see if any of them actually asks your institution to submit recommendations responses with the AIU. These are annually reviewed by us as well. And then the compilation of those recommendations are then reviewed at the next MPPR or at the next self-study evaluation. So when you write those recommendations, please focus on actions taken and outcomes. It is supposed to be iterative, so we don't expect that in the first year you will have completed everything, but please do not repeat the same thing from year to year. If you were a peer evaluator, you wouldn't like to see that from an institution. So next, another item on your roles and responsibilities is to serve as a key resource person and coordinating the details of all accreditation related visits by MSCHE staff and peer evaluators. I have listed here all the different types of visits that we may do with your institution. The most common, most people know, is the self-study preparation visit, or SSPV. That's when your vice president liaison visits you right after self-study institute. Then there's the team chair's preliminary visit, evaluation visit. Those are commonly known. But if there are supplemental reports or monitoring reports or focus reports, they may be a follow-up visit. If there is non-compliance, we are required to do a commission liaison guidance visit, and that's when we, your VP liaison, will visit you to provide guidance on how to address the concerns of the commissions. And another one common is if you have created a new additional location or branch campus, it will be very common that there will be a substantive change visit to visit the first 3 new additional locations. Any new branch campuses we always visit. That is not always the VP liaison, it may be, but it most likely it will be somebody from our staff that's in charge of substantive change. And show cause visits, of course, are very rare. That's when an institution needs to show cause why they should not lose their accreditation. So next, the ALO is responsible for maintaining familiarity with the institution's accreditation history by reviewing the statement of accreditation status posted on the MSCHE website. I talked about the SAS a few minutes ago. You should be be familiar with past accreditation reports and all correspondence with MSCHE. That's bullet 8 in that document. So the commission communicates with our members and the public, including the media, by sharing information through the online institutional directory. This online institutional directory is found on our website, www.msche.org. I hope you're familiar with your institution's page on the institutional directory. Each institution has some very basic information that is included on the SAS, from the address to the last 10 years of commission actions. And for the few of you who don't know who your VP liaison is, that is the easiest way to find out. You go to the institution's SAS, and you will see in the main information, you will see the president's name, you will see your name, other information such as Carnegie classification, and then you will see who the VP liaison is. And there we go. Okay, so sorry, I'm gonna go back. One more. Can you go back like 3 more? There we go. That's what the SAS looks like. And Adelphi is the first one on our list, which is why it's always, you will always see it. And you will see on the right-hand side, you can actually print the SAS. So a lot of times the ALO communicates with us, especially with Diana, to ask, can you give me an official letter that we are accredited by you? This is actually the official document. By printing the SAS, you can submit it to SEVIS, you can submit it to other accreditors to show that your institution is accredited by msche.org. But if you need any other information and any other documentation or letters, particularly about SEVIS for new programs to be eligible to enroll international students, Diana Bonner, that you have been hearing from today, is the person to talk to. All right, 2 more key responsibilities. Ensuring the accuracy of institutional data collected, that is the one with the AIU, and ensuring that we are notified of changes, including the changes in the key contact persons. So please review that SAS on a regular basis. If you are the new ALO, then your name should be included on the portal, and we will talk about that. Also, it is part of your responsibility to share the availability of training opportunities offered by MSCHE for the institutional community. For example, we just had an awesome webinar on distance education. We are having a webinar about the transfer experience. So those are general webinars as opposed to the one we're doing today, where you would be, is because of your responsibility as an ALO. Some of the other webinars are really other general information that anybody in the institution would be fine for. So let's do another poll. Next, let's see if I can get that. Vicki, will you please launch the next poll? So which best describes your level of familiarity with MSCHE portal? Do you use it frequently? You know it, you have used it. You just learned that it exists. Or, ooh, what portal? I never heard of that. Okay, let's close the poll and see. About half of you use it frequently. Thank you. And the other half know that you have used it and know that it exists. Good, wonderful. Thank you. So let's talk, for the sake of that second half, let's talk about the MSCHE institutional portal very briefly. This is what it looks like. When you go to our website, you want to click on login. And so you will see the information there. You will see, click on login. If you do not have login credentials, please email support@msche.org and they will provide the credentials and help you through. Also, if you see at the bottom, we actually have some training videos that help you navigate through the portal. It is sort of intuitive, but not necessarily everything is intuitive. So that's why I think it's important for you to review the training videos. So very quickly, let's look at what the portal looks like when you actually go on. On the right-hand side, you will see your institution, top right-hand side, I have graded out the institution's name and it says, welcome, so-and-so. So that will be your name, and you will see that at the top, you will see all the different boxes, but the boxes are repeated also at the bottom. You should be looking at your institutional profile. Now, when you became a new ALO, somebody had to have gone in to change the key context. Maybe you did, maybe somebody else. There are 5 people who have access to change these things in the portal. And so we will go through a couple of these things, not all of them, but a couple of these things right now. So your institution profile, this is information that you will provide. Not everything can be changed by you, but there's some things that can be changed without substantive change review. But all of this information, basic information, you will be provided and you should be checking. One of those things that's important to check is, for example, if you have recently gone to an open branch campus or additional location in another state, you would need a license to operate in that particular state, and you need to let us know that we have that. If you have other accreditors, such as the ABA or the CCNE, all of that information would be included here, and the credential levels that are included in the scope of accreditation. That you cannot change by yourself. That needs to go through our substantive change process. However, you could change mailing address, for example, or phone. And when in doubt about changing addresses, please contact Diana. Diana is the person to talk to about any of those specific changes. The next piece is your key contacts. So these are the 5 people that have access to the portal. Your president, CEO, your CAO or Chief Academic Officer, the CFO or Chief Financial Officer, you and a portal delegate. And when you are doing self-study, the steering committee co-chairs also have access because they would be the people that are uploading the report and the evidence. Now, a word about that portal delegate. The portal delegate doesn't have to be any of the other 4. And a lot of ALOs put themselves both as the ALO and a portal delegate. Well, what happens if the ALO leaves the institution? You're the only person that actually really knows how to manage this portal. You should have another person be your portal delegate. It could be, if you're not it, your IR person. It could be your CAO's executive assistant. It should be somebody that has access, but of course, all of this is confidential. A lot of this is confidential, and therefore, only the people that have the authority to make any changes should be your portal delegate. So please note that once a key contact record is created at your institution, you are not able to change the specific information. Okay, so if you need assistance, please contact support@msche.org. Most of the time, what I say is just if you're changing your title, for example, if you're changing somebody's title, just scroll down and add new and put that person with the new title. Sometimes it happens like when somebody's an interim and that has been changed to a regular, a permanent position. You can't just change that. It is much easier, just go down, add new, put that person's name and put the new title in. So that's it for me at this end. Over to you, Diana.
Thank you, Edna. So we'll discuss Section B of the ALO guidelines document now. Section B focuses on the ALO's responsibilities related to awareness of, compliance with, sharing information about the Commission's policies, procedures, and guidelines. This begins with the standards for accreditation and requirements of affiliation. Can you come to the next slide? The ALO is responsible for maintaining a working knowledge of MSCHE standards for accreditation, requirements of affiliation, policies, procedures, and guidelines, as well as ensuring the compliance with MSCHE's requirements of affiliation, standards for accreditation, and policies are incorporated into the ongoing planning and evaluation processes of the institution. So by now, you are familiar with the standards for accreditation. These are the key areas that are reviewed during any accreditation evaluation review. The last part of item 2 is one of the main reasons that the commission requires the ALO to be someone with time, knowledge, and authority to engage with the president and others on campus on accreditation matters. Another important aspect of all accreditation reviews is the requirements of affiliation. To be eligible for and to achieve and to maintain MSCHE accreditation, the institution must demonstrate that it fully meets and is in continual compliance with the requirements of affiliation. These are the foundational expectations for all Middle States member institutions. Items 3 and 4 state that the ALO is responsible for regularly reviewing information, including updates to policy documents available at the MSCHE website, familiarizing faculty, staff, administrators, board members, students, and other key stakeholders with MSCHE policies and procedures, especially when documents are newly adopted or revised. Member institutions are expected to maintain compliance with the commission policies and procedures. The most current policies and procedures and guidelines are posted on the website. So always visit the website for the most up-to-date version. The website allows you to download information and these copies of these policies, procedures, and guidelines. But I would not suggest keeping them around for very long because revisions are made. And again, you are responsible for ensuring compliance with the most up-to-date recent policies, procedures, and guidelines. The documents on the directory are organized in alphabetical order. There is a search filter, and you can search by title, keyword, or by the type of document. There are 2 subpages within this page. All policies, procedures, and guidelines that are in effect are posted on the Browse Policies and Procedures page. Policies that are under any sort of review or have recently been reviewed and approved but are not yet in effect are posted on the Policies Under Review page. An important note is that member institutions are encouraged to provide comment on the policy. The commission will post policies that have an open call for comments here. And that's another important role for the ALO, which is to ensure that the community knows that policies and procedures can be commented upon. And so when those open comment periods are available, to ensure that your community is aware of that. There are many policies and procedures listed in the directory. This is a small representation, a sampling of the most pertinent to your work as an ALO. You should make it a regular practice to visit the MSCHE website, reading email notifications and newsletters to keep you abreast of changes and revisions. And also have a working familiarity of the policies and procedures so that you are aware of what you may need to do when accreditation related situations arise on your campus. Finally, the ALO is responsible for notifying MSCHE in advance of substantive changes and major institutional developments and coordinating the submission of all substantive change requests in accordance with the policy on substantive change. To begin with, let me remind you that the scope of an institution's accreditation is established at the time of its initial grant of accreditation. Now, for some of you, that may have been in the early 1900s, 1920, 1930. Obviously, there are many changes that have been taking place over the course of time at the institution. And they are reaffirmed at each of the self-study evaluations. However, we know that institutions are constantly changing and based on a variety of factors, both internal and external. So the Department of Education designates certain types of changes as substantive, and those require notifications and/or separate review by the commission prior to implementation. So another poll. We're going to rate your comfort level with the substantive change process. I'm going to guess that that's going to be fairly on the high range because most institutions, that is the first opportunity for an ALO to wet their feet, to dip their toes into the Middle States pool. So Vicki, would you launch this poll? Okay, let's take a look at the responses. Moderate, okay, 40%, now that's a pretty high number. 34%, very little. I'm gonna guess over the course of your time being an ALO, that's gonna rise significantly. And then there are, it's about 15% or so, that's at a high level. So that's great. Because substantive change is an area that undergoes a lot of revision based on changes coming from the Department of Education and the federal government. So as a result of new regulations that were released by the Department of Education in November of 2019, the commission made major revisions to the policies and procedures and streamlined the submission process and updated the guidelines to account for those changes. Substantive change policy and procedures are reviewed regularly, and as I said, frequent revisions are necessary because of the continuous change in higher education environment and supplemental guidance that we receive from the Department of Education. So for substantive change, the fundamental policy statement is that institutions must submit a request for certain types of changes that request must be reviewed and acted upon by the commission prior to implementation. There are other types of changes that require notification to the commission as well. So these are the documents that have been developed, procedures, guidelines, and template documents for substantive change and for complex substantive changes. These documents are intended to describe the steps in the approval process, the different types of substantive change, and to assist you in providing the required information for appropriate review. The policy, procedures, and guidelines are available on the policies directory on the MSCHE website. There is in fact a page dedicated to substantive change with resources and lots of information. The templates, forms, and all of this additional information are found on the Substantive Change Resources webpage. Commission staff, as well as your Vice President Liaison, are available to provide information and respond to specific questions about substantive change requirements. You'll see at the bottom of the page, there is a link where you can email questions to the commission staff regarding substantive changes. If you need immediate assistance, again, you are encouraged to contact your Vice President Liaison. Any of the staff is available because we understand that the substantive change process and procedures can be quite a bit to navigate.
Diana, if I may add one more thing.
Absolutely.
Please note on the left that we have the 6 times a year when the substantive change request may be submitted. Please, when you are anticipating a substantive change, we need you to submit the substantive change request at least 3 months prior to when you want to implement that change. So don't wait until the last minute. So if you want to implement something for the fall semester, don't wait until September 1 or even July 1. I would suggest put it in by May 1st. That would give you the best opportunity, because unlike other reviews, substantive change actually allows you to interact with the peer evaluators and for them to ask additional information from you if needed.
Thank you, Ina. That's important. That's an important note. So how do you submit a substantive change? The Reviews tab on the MSCHE portal is where you can submit a request and upload the required information. You can also submit required information for follow-up reports on this tab. By clicking here, you will access the substantive change screening form. The substantive change screening form is a step-by-step integrated process which assists you in determining whether a substantive change request is necessary at all, or if the change only requires notification to the commission. Gathering the documentation and evidence required for the type of substantive change being requested, and notifying the commission staff of the possibility of a substantive change request from your institution. So that's a little preview for the staff that a substantive change is coming from your institution and that you are working on gathering that information. Completion of the screening form also enables you to initiate the substantive change request. So that was just an introductory primer of the substantive change process. For more information, you are strongly encouraged to register for the live webinar on substantive change being offered on Thursday, October 27th. So that's next Thursday. Go to the events page, not now, but after this webinar, on our website and register for the free event. Ina, I'm going to transition back to you.
Thank you, Diana. One more bit on substantive change. If you want to know the first, whether the change that is being implemented at your institution requires approval, go to the substantive change guidelines. And the reason why I ask you to go to the guidelines first is because that document provides examples of what types of substantive change there may be. So that will be a very, very good one. And of course, when in doubt, please contact Uvp Liaison. So let's talk about item C, section C, state and federal regulations. And you're probably wondering, what do I really need to know about this? There are actually several pieces that are important for you to know. One, The requirement of affiliation number 5 states the following. The institution complies with all applicable government, usually federal and state, laws and regulations. That is one of our requirements of affiliation. So these pertain primarily to regulations put forth by the Department of Education, for example, FERPA, the Clery Act, Title IV, Title IX, etc. But it also applies to state regulations. And as you know, most of the states have a higher education office that you need to comply with their regulations as well. In addition, during the self-study process, those of you who are currently in SSI will know this, the member institutions are expected to maintain compliance, to demonstrate compliance with applicable federal regulation requirements. So these are currently the 8 areas of institutional compliance with accreditation relevant federal regulations, which are reviewed during self-study in conjunction with Standard 2 Criterion 8. There is actually a form that you will need to fill out and you will need to upload it as part of the evidence for Standard 2 Criterion 8. If you have any questions about these, please contact policy@msche.org. Those are the people that know most about, of course, always your VP liaison. And these regulations change year to year. And therefore, Middle States offers a webinar just in time prior to your submission of your self-study report. So again, that's another reason why you should whitelist msche.org, because you will get information, and it is by invitation only, just like this webinar. By invitation, you will be asked to participate on a webinar on that year's form and that year's federal regulation compliance for self-study. So these are the 4 items under the state and federal regulations section in that ALOs roles and responsibilities document we gave you. All of these have to do with communicating with the commission in a timely manner, and all of these have to do with honesty and truthfulness in what you communicate about your accreditation process. So let's talk about communicating with the commission. So it's all about communications. When we talk about communications, as it applies to institutions, you are governed by our standards for accreditation and requirements of affiliation. Specifically, you see here on the screen Standard 2, ethics and integrity. This standard requires honesty and truthfulness in communications with the institutions and with the public. And the requirement of affiliation number 14. This requirement of affiliation also talks about the disclosure of information. And you will see that you are required, the institution is required that the institution describes itself in comparable and consistent terms to all of its accrediting and regulatory agencies, communicates any changes in accredited status, and agrees to disclose information, including levels of governing body compensation, if any, required by the commission to carry out its accreditation responsibilities. Notice that requirement of affiliation 14 makes your governing body the entity responsible for compliance with this requirement. So expectations and communications are further spelled out in 2 other policy and procedures areas: the public disclosure and communications in the accreditation process. And these are perhaps the most visible aspects as far as the institutions are concerned. You are required to have a general statement about your MSCHE membership displayed on your website. The public disclosure procedure spells that out. In addition, This document outlines the number of other areas such as student achievement data, cost of attendance, etc., that also must be publicly disclosed. This is your responsibility as the ALO to be aware of where this is and when it has been revised. Because during the self-study process or during any of the follow-up, one of the main things that your peer evaluators will do, one of the first things peer evaluators will do is look at your website and see how you describe yourself. And I have seen cases where the peer evaluators have seen that you have described yourself one way for one accreditor and another way, like for a programmatic accreditor, and a different way for another accreditor. And you don't want to get into trouble for that. Because remember, during self-study or any other accreditation review, you are required to comply with requirements of affiliation, standards for accreditation, and MSCHE policies and procedures. So that is one of them, one of those that the evaluators will clearly look at. So please make sure that you are in compliance. So let's talk a little bit about the MSCHE logo. You might have been aware that when we celebrated our 100th anniversary of founding MSCHE, we actually went through a rebranding process and we created a new logo, which you see behind me on the screen, which those are the 3 pillars of Middle State. One thing that I would ask you to do, particularly if you haven't done so lately, go to your website and see if you are using the most current logo. If you're using the MSA logo that we used to have, please talk to your webmaster about changing it, and you must follow the guidelines for how to use a logo. We want you to use that logo. And so here are 2 examples of institutions who have added it to the pages along with a general statement about their accreditation. While the logo is optional, accurate representation of the accreditation status is mandatory. So don't do it now, but check on your page as we conclude, as we finish with this webinar. And you can see on the screen that there are a couple things, several things that are required for you to include on that page. You are required to include the accreditation phase, the accreditation status, any non-compliance and adverse actions, and the scope of accreditation. And if you have questions about what scope of accreditation means, it means anything that has to do with how you operate your institution, and in most cases, it includes whether you have additional locations, branch campuses, or it's other instructional sites. It definitely includes the number and the types of credentials that that are included in your scope, and it also includes whether you are approved to offer programs in distance education. There's another policy. Remember, Diana said there are lots of different policies, but this is one that we want you to also look at. This is the communication in the accreditation process policy and procedures. You will notice that Middle States has 2 different documents for everything. We have a document of policy, which those are not quite set in stone, but don't change very often. There's a document of procedures that may change a little more often than that. In the communication and the accreditation process policy, it describes the Commission's commitment to transparent communication in the accreditation process. It includes procedures for sharing information with each of the Commission's constituencies. That is, how the Commission communicates with institutions through the CAO, the key contacts, and you, the ALO. It also includes, this document also includes how the Commission shares information about itself, and how the commission shares information about member institutions. Remember what we talked about the SAS, the Statement of Accreditation Status. This document also describes how the commission meets its obligation to provide notification of accreditation actions. This is one that we always hear from our institutions about, because you know when the commission meets and you know when your institution is up for review with the commission and you want to know right away. But this policy allows us up to 30 days to notify the institution. And that is because behind the scenes, and most people don't know this, behind the scenes, there are many, many notifications that have to go through to the federal government, to the Department of Education, to the state agencies, to other accrediting agencies, IPEDS. There are many notifications that are behind the scenes that need to be put in place before we make it public what the commission action is. And these procedures, and I'm gonna have to go back. There we go. These procedures also provide information about confidentiality. So here's a basic rule of thumb. All communications between the institution and the commission are confidential. We are not allowed to talk to anybody else. So you may have heard somebody else calls us and wants to talk about the institution. Somebody from your institution emails us and wants information. And that has happened to me a lot. When we respond to the individual, we say the communication, the official communication needs to happen with the ALO. So you would be copied on anything. And in some cases, I know you will be surprised to hear, oh, I didn't know that. It is important for you to know anytime that anybody from your institution communicates with us. So all public inquiries to the commission for accreditation, inquiries for accreditation materials are directed to the institution. Your accreditation materials belong to you. It is up to you whether you want to share or publish your accreditation materials. Some institutions share freely their self-study report, some do not want to. When we, Middle States, use your accreditation materials as an example, and you have seen some of those examples when you were in Self-Study Institute, or even in this presentation, we have asked the institution for permission to use their materials as part of our training. Any inquiries from media to the commission are directed to our MSCHE Senior Director of Communications and Public Relations, that's Mr. Brian Kirshner. But there are some exceptions in terms of this policy. And one, the confidentiality is deemed waived by the institution if the commission receives a subpoena or a court order, or to meet a request from an appropriate government agency or other officials, also to fulfill a Freedom of Information Act, a FOIA request, or to correct misleading information. Please know, we keep everything confidential, and so particularly conversations with your VP liaison are incredibly important. So let's finish with talk about communication with your VP liaison. I think everything I have to say is on the screen. When in doubt, call, email, send snail mail, smoke signal, carrier pigeon, anything you want. I can't say come visit us because we are not in the office right now, but please, please communicate. Your first point of contact with the commission should be your VP liaison. The VP liaison has a wealth of information that they can share with you. And when they have a doubt, they will consult with the other VP liaison, particularly the ones that have been around for a long time. Always we consult with our supervisor. And we pride ourselves actually in Middle States on responding to your requests and to your emails very quickly. But please, we cannot always respond within the hour. So, because I just received this morning an email from somebody says, did you see this? And they sent it yesterday. Well, yes, and sometimes, please know that sometimes when we don't respond very quickly, it's because we are consulting with others. We want to make sure that we provide the correct information for you. So over to you, Diana.
So we're gonna talk about resources. We've gone over a lot today, but have no fear. All of the links to the relevant policies and procedures are available to you, and you have received this slide deck that has been made available to you. Also, the recording of this webinar will be made available to you after today. So here's another tip. Those of you in the Self-Study Institute are already familiar with this, but we want to point out that the Self-Study Institute Communications Plan, whether you are in SSI or not, are some great templates, suggestions for you to communicate to your community, and that can be found in module number 3 on the Self-Study Institute webpage. And so now here's another reminder of how to submit your questions. For those using the web browser, you can follow the directions at the bottom of your screen here. If you're on a desktop, you can use this screen to find the chat feature. And for those of you, I think you have the clicker, Ina.
Yes. Sorry, I was trying to see, and I'm sorry, while I was sharing the screen, I couldn't see that you weren't able to locate the link. We sent an email to everybody.
Yes, and I'm not sure whether we were able to get it into the chat or not, but we can work on that during this.
Mhm.
So if you join the session using your mobile, this is your
So
instructions.
Vicky, if you could put that link in the chat, please. Okay, so we have a couple of questions, so let's
Great, let's go
dive
to
in.
the,
We left a
Q&A.
lot of time for this Q&A because we thought you would have lots of questions. Let's go see. Is the MPPR delayed for this year? Yes, that is true. We are reviewing and revising how we conduct the MPPR. When will it resume? We don't know at this point. There is a committee that is currently reviewing the MPPR process. And so we are at this point a very clear example of how we use assessment to determine whether what we're doing is fulfilling the purposes we want. So I'm sorry, at this point, we don't know when the MPPR will be done. However, please know that you don't need to write a report for it. So as soon as it resumes, we will let you know. And if we have any questions, then we will contact you. Otherwise, the MPPR process goes through behind the scenes. Okay. If you have an issue with your VP liaison, please make sure that then you can always contact our supervisor. That is Dr. Ellie Fogarty, and you can find her email and on our website.
on the website, it is on the
Staff.
under About Us. Click down a couple levels and there's the staff, and then there are there is a listing of all of the staff members and their emails. And if you click inside, you can find our few brief words about our bios and pictures. So it's all there on the MSCHE website.
Okay. I have another question about MPPR, which says, when and by what channels would an institution receive recommendations from the commission for response in the midpoint peer review? That's a great question. The channel would be your VP liaison, or will be through anybody through the process that is managing the MPPR. So if the peer reviewers have a question about some of your data, some of the information that is included in your AIU, remember the MPPR is basically using 5 years of accumulated data. And one of the reasons why we may be in contact with you is because the iPads, what we do is we download iPads data for the MPPR. And so it may be that that data is old, or we need more up-to-date, particularly if there were some concerns about your data from a couple of years ago and we want the most up-to-date information, then we may be in contact with you. The ALO will be the person that will receive the email from your VP liaison with the questions. Okay. So did you hear that correctly? That if we have other institutional accreditors, such as for our nursing programs, those should be listed in an institutional profile section. Yes, that is correct. It is important for us to know who are you other accreditors. And again, if you have any questions on how to do that, or questions about what to include, please contact your VP liaison at that. A good question here. Diana, is there a list on the portal with what defines a substantive change?
There absolutely is. Earlier in the presentation, you heard Edna mention the substantive change guidance document. There are examples there. There is a listing there. There is also a list in the procedures document. And certainly if you go into the portal and click the button that says, what does the link say, Edna, to submit a substantive change?
Yeah, you
Yes.
go, you click substantive change, you scroll down a bit, and you will see the types of substantive change, the forms, and so on. So you will see a table under each of those tabs.
Yes.
That describes what the substantive changes are. And when in doubt, you click on the link, it will take you to the form, and the top half, the first page of the form, is the definition of that substantive change.
That's correct. So if you are using the screening form, that will also help you determine what type of substantive change you are trying to submit, or if it's even necessary that a substantive change be submitted. It may be a different process that you have to go through in order to make the change that you're looking for. So that information is available on our website. And again, when in doubt, you can certainly contact your Vice President Liaison. You can also contact the substantive change at msche.org email, in which case one of the staff members who work closely in substantive change will respond.
Mm-hmm. A question about the public disclosure. Our past ALO simply had a link on the institutional profile on the MSCHE website. Is that sufficient, or do we need that text on the website itself? Well, what I can say is a best practice is what we showed you on slide 61, which how an institution explains to the public. It is not, the SAS, yes, provides a lot of information, but it doesn't, that is more of a technical document for institutions and for agencies, you really want to provide a little bit more background and information on your website on what it means to be accredited. And by all means, one of the things that you're required to put on your website is our address and our way to communicate with us. So that piece, you can't just have them link to your SAS. You actually do need to include how to communicate with us on that website.
There is also a sample statement that you can find listed in the procedures document that you can use if you'd like to have that script for what should be appearing on your website.
Mm-hmm. So here's a question about MPPR. Why does not surprise me? So the MPPR takes place 4 or after 5 years from the previous reaccreditation site visit. So you say you were reaccredited in 2019, your MPPR is scheduled for 2024. That's another place, another thing where your SAS is a great source of information. Your statement of accreditation status or your institutional profile on our web will list the date of the MPPR for you and also the date of your next self-study evaluation visit. A caveat about MPPR, the date that we include in the MPPR is the year when we collect the information. However, that is not the year when the action actually occurs. So for example, if your MPPR date is 2021 this year, and hopefully we will conduct MPPR, but assuming everything was fine, if it's 2021, right now, we would be collecting the information. We would be assigning peer evaluators to your review, and they would be looking at it and seeing if there is anything else they want you to know. So you would hear from us at the end of the fall semester, whether we have any questions or we need more information. But the actual MPPR review happens in January of the following year, when the committee meets before we met in Philadelphia, now we meet virtually, when the committee meets, and then they make a recommendation to the commission, and the commission acts during their meeting in March. So your MPPR year might have been 2021, but you will not receive a commission action about it until 2022. Question, do we need to submit to Mscht any updates regarding programmatic accreditation status? CCNE and so on. Diana, that's your expertise.
Yes, and yes. If an institution is voluntarily withdrawing from any of its programmatic accreditation memberships, we need to know that, and then we follow up with a questionnaire to the institution or so to the ALO, asking specific information about that. At the same time, the other accrediting bodies communicate regularly with us, and so we receive notification that an institution has voluntarily withdrawn. We receive notification about adverse actions, just as those bodies receive notification from us about an adverse action that our commission has taken regarding that institution. So there's a lot of communication going on, both between us and the other recognized accreditors, as well as information that should be flowing between us and the institutions in reference to programmatic or specialized accrediting bodies.
I have another question, and this is an interesting one. We all understand that all the institutions have presidents and vice presidents that are very busy. Yes, we know, due to all of their roles and responsibilities. What strategies and recommendations would you provide for you to get more engaged? If you are a vice president, a provost, or a president or CEO, you are given opportunities to actually engage with the commission. And remember, in one of those polls, we asked you if you had participated in breakfast or
Coffee with the commission.
Coffee with the commission. Those are by invitation only, and those are where presidents and provosts are invited to participate in coffee with the commission. That's when our president and our senior vice presidents then engage in conversation with them. There are other ways that your presidents can be engaged. They can be attend the annual conference, and at the annual conference, we always actually have. That's where my breakfast idea came from. During the annual conference, we have breakfast with the presidents and provosts, where again, they engage information from them. In very large institutions, particularly, the presidents rely on you as the ALO to keep them informed, which is why we say, and I have said that to presidents myself, your ALO should be somebody that can easily ask for an appointment with you, and you will grant them that appointment as soon as possible. Because if the ALO wants to talk to you, it's usually because it's something that is related to accreditation, and you should pay attention to that person. So regardless of who you are as the ALO, we actually convey that information to the presidents. We don't expect that they keep up to date on everything, but then we do expect that they are aware of the importance of your role. And that at some point, they also connect once a year or so with the commission through these opportunities. Could the institution, here's a good one. Could the institution select the date of the MSCHE site visit? In our case, we're scheduled for 23-24. That means you're in Self-Study Institute right now. Diana?
Yes. So the institution, through its self-study design, can indicate whether it is interested in hosting a fall visit or a spring visit. So if the evaluation date is, you said 23-24, Ina?
23-24, yeah.
So that institution, your institution, can ask to have its visit in the fall of 23 or in the spring of 24. Now, once that season is determined, then it is the job of the chair of the team to discuss with the president of your institution what the specific dates will be within guidelines that we provide to the team chair. So at that point, they are comparing calendars to see when it's most feasible for your institution and also for the chair and the team. Once those dates are established, then the rest of the team is gathered and we move forward from that. So it is a negotiation between the team chair and the leadership at your institution.
Right, but then you need to tell us whether you want a fall or spring visit. That you need to tell us
Yes.
first. So because.
And that's done in the design.
And that's done in the self-study design. And that's when we, all the entire institutional peer relations staff gets together several times, a couple times a year. So we will choose the options for your team chair at a different time, whether you said spring or whether you said fall. Okay, so here's another question. I'm moving now to the chat because I think we handle all the ones in Q&A. Do new degree programs with a new program accreditor need a substantive change if the degree level is already approved for the institution?
No, a new degree level and with a new accreditor does not need to undergo a substantive change review if the institution is already approved to offer degrees at that level, unless they only have one program at that particular credential level. So if they have less than 2 programs at that particular level, they need to get approval for the second program. After the second program, they can offer as many programs as they'd like at that degree level.
A question that was not asked, but I think it's important. I'm always finding other ways to point to other things. One is a question we often get is if we were offering a program face-to-face and now we are offering a new program online, but it's the same program. It's exactly the same program, except we're offering them online. So that is one exception to this general statement that once you are approved for the credential level, you're good, you're good for the first two programs. Actually, if you are switching modalities from an existing program to go from face-to-face to online or the other way around, then you need to provide an official notification to the commission, and you will see on that substantive change website, you scroll all the way to the bottom, you will see the tab for required notifications. And that will tell you there are 4 different items where there would be, it doesn't go through substantive change process. I mean, it doesn't go through a peer review or committees, but it is required for you to submit those notifications. And you will find directions there on how to do that. Okay. So here's an interesting question. Maybe Diana, you can help me with this one. Under the locations tab on the Msche portal, for each campus, there is a drop-down box for primary contact and secondary contact. Is there a suggestion who should be in each role?
No, it's that is the institution's prerogative. Often those locations will have a dean or someone who is the leader in the leadership or administration of the program that is taking place at that location, and that would be the primary contact. Often I've found that those contacts are the ALO for the main campus or at the main campus, because anything that happens at those locations needs to go through the institution's main administration. So it's really up to what's happening at the location, what kinds of programs are offered at the location, and if there is an individual there who's in charge of that, or if it's actually being operated from the main campus.
Right. Thank you, Diana.
You're welcome.
Here's a very good question. May we submit updates, for example, addressing recommendations in between AIU somewhere in the portal? And if so, where in the portal do we go? Well, the answer to the first question is no. You can only submit recommendations, responses at the time of the AIU. The AIU is open for several weeks. You are notified, again, whitelist msche.org. You are notified when the portal is open. And actually, one of the reasons we ask you to whitelist msche.org domain is because these emails go from a system. So they are mass emails. And particularly if your institution's email is very tight in terms of security, they will not accept mass emails. But then really, we cannot send 524 emails separately. So they have to go as mass emails. You will be notified when it opens and when it closes. And you cannot submit at any other time in between. So prior to the time when you know that it's going to open, you should be collecting that information on recommendations, responses. Because a lot of the time it's not your direct responsibilities that you are going to be responding. It's somebody else as the institution that will be responding to those recommendations, responses. So that's why it's important that you have the authority to go tell people and say, we need that and we need that on this date, or I need it now. It has to be done now.
Yes, and I would not suggest waiting until the AIU period opens to start collecting information that's happened over the course of the last year, because that's going to be very difficult. So that information needs to be stored in a place where you and others in your institution will be able to access it, update it, so that when the AIU opens, you're ready to go with gathering the information and writing your report. And I just want to add one other comment to what Edna was saying about communication and whitelisting the msche.org domain. On many of the emails that come out through the other platforms that we host, there's an option that you can opt out of email. Please don't do that. There may be others at your institution, because really anyone can opt in to receive notifications from us. Now, they wouldn't be the notifications that are specific about your institution or specific about the commission's actions regarding your institution, but just general information. Anyone on your campus can opt in to receive them, and then they may decide, this is too much, I don't need this, I'm going to opt out. You, as the ALO, should not be opting out of any communications from MSCHE.
Okay, so I have a question here about substantive change. To follow up on the question, where are we? There are 6 substantive change deadlines each year, yes. How quickly does the commission usually get back to the institution with approval and or follow-up questions? You'll be glad to know this. The substantive change process doesn't have to go to the commission meeting. That only happens 3 times a year. The substantive change committee meets 6 times a year, corresponding to each of those deadlines. So if the deadline is July 1st, the substantive change committee will meet in the middle of August. And so usually within 6 weeks, that information, your request is being reviewed. And so, and usually, our substantive change staff assigns evaluators within a week. So if the deadline was July 1st, by the end of the first week of July, we have evaluators already assigned to your review. We will ask if there is any conflict of interest with the evaluators that we have assigned. So yes, you will be receiving contact from substantive change at msche.org. And then that goes to the reviewers. They have several weeks. There are 2 reviewers per request. And so if they have any questions, they will contact our substantive change staff, and then they will contact you. And normally what they do is they send you a Word document with a list of questions. So here are the questions, and please submit your answers to us in writing, and that becomes part of the record. So if everything goes well, if there are no questions and no request for additional information, the substantive change committee meets at the end of August. You know, in my example of the July 1st deadline, it meets at the end of August, and then within a couple of weeks or so, you will be receiving approval. There are times when there's just not sufficient information, and then your VP liaison will say, we don't have enough information. We'll give you the option to withdraw it sometimes, you know, and resubmit when you have the appropriate information. Or we say, we are not able to review it right now, and so we will give you longer time to submit information. But very rarely does it go to the following, the subsequent meeting. So to answer, you know, quickly your question, if everything's well, you should hear within 2 months. If not, it will take up to 4 or maybe 6 months, but that depends on what information is needed from you. So to follow up on the question about updates on on recommendations. Do we provide updates in the AAU on recommendations from the team that the commission did not mention in its action?
No, you follow the direction given to you in the commission's action. And if you have any question about when you are notified that the action is available, you log into the portal and you will see that the letter is there specifying what action the commission has taken place. That language is our standardized language and sometimes is a little difficult to decipher in terms of what it is specifically that the institution is being asked to do. So in that case, you would need to contact your vice president liaison for an explanation of what the action means for the institution and what the commission's expectations are for response. But if the request does not appear in the action, specific to recommendations that the team may have made to the institution, then the institution does not need to respond to those at that time. They will respond during the next self-study evaluation.
Okay, so a question says, we have lots of self-site locations we're currently not using. There are no students. They were used years ago. We've seen that happen. Should we close them out as a substantive change or leave them open for potential future growth? What are the pros and cons?
Yes.
That's a good question. So let me start and then Diana, you can add to it. Other instructional sites, that is less than 50% of a program is being offered or was being offered at the time. And if it's an OIS, you can easily close it. There is no substantive change. You simply close it at the time of the AIU, you change that, and you can inactivate them as opposed to close them. So, but if it's an additional location, which is more common, then you should submit a substantive change. It is not that expensive to submit a substantive change to close it. There is no visit and the report is very short. You basically do a lot of NAs on that form because what you're doing is you're closing it.
Particularly if there are no students.
If there are no students, definitely.
There is a cost.
There's a cost.
But there is also a cost for maintaining additional locations that are not in use on your SAS, within the scope of your accreditation. And when your annual dues are assessed,
That's included.
that is included. So that's something for your institution to consider. If you have a number of locations that you used to use and aren't using right now, and you don't know whether or not the institution is planning to reinstitute those locations, that's a discussion that you should have on your campus. And you should think about, okay, what is the cost of carrying these versus what would be the cost to reopen them if we ever decide to go back to them versus what is the cost to close them.
And in any case, if it's been more than a couple of years and you are reopening them, you really should be submitting new information to the commission about that particular location.
Correct.
So somebody wants to know, where is the sample of what needs to be in the website? On our slides is slide number 61. The one, and the policy is public disclosure policy and procedures. That's the one. Does MSCHE ever offer dedicated workshops on the AIU and the MPPR? So yes, many questions have been answered, thank you. But a dedicated workshop would be helpful. What we do provide is a number of video instructions for completing the NPPR and particularly the AIU. We have a very comprehensive list of frequently asked questions, and we have a data dictionary that is provided with the AIU. There's a lot of information that you can find on our website about the AIU, and when in doubt, you email, so here's a different email, research@msche.org. They are very responsive, except of course when they have like 50 emails in one day about one thing or another.
And that's generally when the AIU period is open. But the FAQ and the data dictionary are available on our website all the time. So
Yes.
questions come up, you can certainly use those resources, and you can email research@msche.org at any time. But we just are forewarning you that during the open period,
There'll be a lot of people asking questions, yes. And there were lots of questions as, how old is the data, how soon do you need it, what type of data do you need? They can answer a lot of those questions. But I have to say, we, the VP liaisons, also are trained on doing the AIU. And this past year, I did spend time with several of my institutions going through, and this is where video calls are wonderful because we can share the screen and I can say, see here, if it's green, it's complete. If it has this, you can change that. So we do pride ourselves in spending time with our institution and helping them out. So will the AIU, the April of May this coming year? We hope so. Definitely. Is there an administrative assistant who should be copied when emailing the VP liaison? Alas, no. It's just us. So do email your VP liaison. We do not have administrative assistants. When we are not available, we are required to have an out of office auto reply, and that auto reply will tell you who to contact. And a lot of times is Ms. Diana here, will be who to contact. If I am not available, my auto reply will say, please contact Diana Bonner at dbonner@msche.org. Last one, I think. In preparing the self-study and preparing for a visit, is it advisable to include follow-ups on all recommendations from the commission since the last study? You want to get started on that one?
So there could be a number of recommendations that are included in the team report. And the whole purpose of this, or one of the main purposes of these processes, is about institutional improvement. So those recommendations are coming from peer evaluators who have reviewed your institution very carefully, and this is expert advice that you are receiving. And so I would say that the institution should be responding to the recommendations as they see fit. Do they have to respond to all of the recommendations in the self-study report, team report? Yes, but those responses could be varied in how the institution chooses to respond. Does an institution have to respond to the recommendations made by the commission? Absolutely, without doubt.
However, what I have to say is when the committee of the commission, the Committee on Evaluation Reports, meets to discuss your self-study report, the team chair's brief, they will go back and look at what your commission actions were from previous years. And they will say, to give an example, okay, back in 2006, we told them assessment was an issue. And then in 2016, we told them assessment as an issue. And here again, the team is saying assessment as an issue. What have they done in the meantime? So while I'm not saying that you will directly address every single thing, you really, in your self-study, you should be aware of what the previous actions were. Even if there was no non-compliance, you were reaffirmed. But if there were recommendations for a progress report that we used to do before, a monitoring report, or an SIR, supplemental information report, what we want you is to pay very close attention to what those recommendations were and do everything in your power not to have the committee saying, hey, we told them twice already, what's going on? All right. I have a couple more questions that came in the chat. So we're needing to suspend admissions to one of our teacher ed programs for a year. Should we report to MSCHE? If so, when? You just decided a few weeks ago. Please contact your MSCHE VP liaison. Contact your vice president liaison. Let them know what's going on, and your vice president will tell you whether that needs to be. There is no, for a quick answer, there is no official notification that you need to include. However, your VP liaisons should know, particularly because we will be notified as well from your accrediting, from CAPE or
Yes.
whatever accrediting body you have for teacher ed. And so you don't want your VP to be surprised with that information. And one last question. Where would we find the explanation of what counts as a location? Best place, my friends, is to go substantive change page on our website and look at the substantive change guidelines and look at the substantive change procedures. And I said also another quick way is you actually open the form for creating additional locations or for creating branch campuses, and you will find the definition of branch campus and the definition of additional location or instructional site. But of course, the best place, the quickest way is to go to our policies page and look at the substantive change guidelines. That will give you definitions and will give you examples on that. So we want to thank you very much for attending this webinar. We are very glad we left a lot of time for Q&A because there were lots of really good, interesting questions. Lots of the questions had to do with substantive change, and we do have that webinar next week. We suggest that you register, and even if you are busy at that time, you are not available, 99% of the time, I say, we make the recording available to you and other information available to you. So, Diana, back to you.
Yes. I want to also extend my thanks for your attention for this morning. I know we sent a lot of information your way. Fortunately, you have our slides. And as I mentioned earlier, you will also be able to receive this recording of this program. And you've got a lot of contact information that we've given you throughout this program. So you've got lots of email contacts, and of course, you can always contact and should be in contact with your vice president liaison. And even if it's just a short, brief introductory email, hi, my name is, I'm the new ALO, and I attended this website and they told me to contact you. So I'll take the hit for that from my colleagues. But also you are welcome to contact me or any of the MSCHE staff. We are here to help. We are here to advise, and we'd love to hear from you. So I thank you again for your attention. Thank you, Edna.
And thank you to our interpreters.
Thank you for our interpreters, and also thank you for Victoria Clark in the background, making sure that we are doing this, providing this event and doing it well. So
Have a great day.